Welcome back, and now it's time for our local press review for today, Tuesday, the 19th of December 2017. And today I'm happy to have with me international law expert as well as political analyst, Ms. Eissa, to comment on the news. And we start off with Al-Wafd newspaper, from which we read that President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi held a meeting on Monday with acting Prime Minister and Minister of Housing, Dr. Mustafa Madbouli. The meeting followed up a number of topics related to the government and the Ministry of Housing. Dr. Mustafa Madbouli reviewed the strategic plan to maximize the utilization of the state's water resources, modernize the wastewater treatment plants, as well as using the best modern irrigation methods to rationalize the use of water. Actually, there were so many issues as well discussed. How do you see that meeting and the topics discussed in it?
I think it's very important that now the government is diverting its attention in regards to water resources, because it has a very good advantage that its outcome is always, the benefit is immediate and on the long run.
Yes.
And it also can utilize the private and the public sector together in terms of where the direction they want to benefit out of the project they're going to start or enhance regarding of water resource. Also, there's the factor of pollution, health, and the economic benefits. So they all like a diagram linked with one another. And also in the news you've commented that they're looking for benefit that include health-related costs. And we have an experience that it was so out there. What happened was China in the 1990s. They lost a welfare of 13 billion because of water pollution. So it is something that has a magnitude, and now that we're diverting our attention to it, it's going to really have a positive outcome.
Also, they discussed the development of several cities. They discussed, of course, the Rauda area. They discussed the Mansoura, also Al-Alamein, and, of course, the new administrative capital, as well as the Maspero Triangle, the development of all these areas. Now, how do you see that as well?
I think it's not just going to benefit this area in particular that you mentioned. These areas and the areas around it and the flow within the country as a whole. Because as I said, in Egypt, everything is interlinked and interconnected together. So I think it's going to have this ease, and it's going to have a very long-term benefit.
Yes. And that includes also, they discussed the various methods of transportation, and that it should be concluded by 2018. That's quite a grand endeavor, because they want to develop the railway, they want to develop the roads, the metro subway system. So that's a large project, don't you think?
Of course, it's a large project, and we have like a macro trial from what they're aiming to do that's happening now with the metro. Like what's happening in Heliopolis and New Cairo. The thing is, the process, if you look about it, what you've just said in the news is promising. But during the duration have lots of setbacks, because they need to have alternative roads in order to facilitate the process for people in these areas and the transportation mechanism itself. So they tell you, like, in the long run, you're going to be more in terms of transportation, going to be more comfortable and more feasible, saving time and energy. But what about the current time, this moment? So the present moment also needs a sufficient amount of planning as much as the long term.
Yes, indeed. And actually, the acting Prime Minister, he has been quite busy. Where from Al-Shuruq newspaper we read that acting Prime Minister and Minister of Housing, Dr. Mustafa Madbouli, headed on Monday the Economic Ministerial Committee to discuss a number of important files. The meeting was attended by the Governor of the Central Bank and the Ministers of Communication, Trade and Industry, Finance, Business Sector, Supply and Planning. And they discussed also other topics, including that, of course, of reaching sustainable development and the economic reform. So how do you see the main topics which were discussed in that meeting?
Also, the main topics are very beneficial, but the one that I would love to talk about more, the fund that's going to come from the World Bank for the small projects. This is something huge, because they're investing lots of money into it, and if it's been utilized properly, it's going to have a beautiful outcome. However, my concern is those small project funds are going to give them to the youth to start their startups or entrepreneurship ideas. They have to be skilled. They have to have a plan. an action plan, and they have to have a calculated outcome in terms of they have to be skilled. Like, are they capable of having an output that's successful? Of course, there's various factors, but at least in theory, it has to be done properly. So they have to be trained, skilled, and perhaps maybe create a committee that sits with those youth that are going to take the fund, see the vision that they have, and direct them. Because we have lots of mental people, like mentally capable of directing the youth. So they need to join forces.
So I hope so, because it's a large amount, it's almost 200 billion, so I hope that that happens. And then now we'll move to Libya. And from Nile News we read that Foreign Minister Sameh Shukri concluded on Monday his visit to Tunisia after participating in the meeting of the tripartite neighborhood countries mechanisms on Libya. And it was called for this meeting by the Tunisian president, and it was attended by the Tunisian president as well as the Algerian foreign minister and the Egyptian foreign minister. And it came on the sidelines of the ministerial meeting of the tripartite neighborhood countries mechanisms on Libya, as mentioned. Now, how do you see the situation, and how can Egypt, Tunisia and Algeria help in resolving the Libyan crisis?
I think they can help beyond measures, in my opinion. Why? Because we're talking from a place of experience, especially when it comes to Tunisia and Egypt, because both countries we have went to instability, massive instability after the revolution, and recreating again the infrastructure of the country. So we are best to consult Libya on its instability phase that's going through. However, people always criticize the fact that you cannot compare because we are a country of institutions. Same with Tunisia. Tunisia also have institutions, and also they have the positive side that we didn't have. Health insurance and education were secured in Tunisia, unlike Egypt. That's before the revolution era. However, Libya, people will tell you they're kind of nomadic. So how can you share experience with someone who doesn't have the same foundation as you are? But stability and stability is a matter that cannot be really scattered around, because it's a double-edged sword in Libya. The fact that they don't have institution also make them like a white sheet. So it's easier, on the other hand, to build something that is from scratch than to build upon something that is already there but has been ruined. So you don't have to fix and get into the institution and then re-systemize it from the beginning. With Libya, you have a blank space in terms of infrastructure, institution, political identity. It's easy to maneuver. It's a bit flexible. So I think we need to join forces in order to consult them best in this era. However, also the security part. Like, we are talking now from the Middle East. We are national. But we need the international community also to join forces. And I think Egypt is capable of doing this, getting more international, powerful, hegemonic countries on board. Because Libya will not just get over the horrible status it's in with Algeria, Tunisia and Egypt, honestly.
Yes, indeed. It's just the first step.
Yes.
And we return back to the economic reform in Egypt, where from Al-Yom Al-Saba, a newspaper, we read that the Minister of Investment and International Cooperation, Dr. Sahar Nasr, began on Monday her visit to Japan to promote investment in Egypt. The minister and the first deputy CEO of the Japanese International Cooperation Agency signed a grant of 993 million yen, representing the second tranche to implement the project of supplying educational and research equipment to Egypt Japan University of Science and Technology. Also, there were meetings also with businessmen as well to promote investment in Egypt. And now this is another new domain, because this will be the first Japanese university outside Japan. How do you see that, and how can we benefit from the Japanese expertise in terms of education and science?
I think Dr. Sahar Nasr did with this idea, this is what we call a vision, a visionary. Because it's brilliant, because it combined benefiting educational-wise, and on the other hand also it's enhancing investment in the economic system. So it has a dual benefit. So this has a vision, like it's visionary. And it's very smart, like you get best of two words combined in one single idea that's going to benefit the country, and it's also going to open the door. Like, it always, you need an initiator. This is the beginning. So perhaps the same scenario that happened with Japan can happen with other countries. So it's going to benefit the flow of investment that's coming within the country. At the same time, like it benefit the education. It's creating a win-win situation. So I think it's brilliant, and we need more of that.
And maybe by that, then we'll have a new younger generation who can think or understand the Japanese mentality, which is different than the European and the American, and then they can deal with them in terms of investment, because also the Dr. Sahab Nasr met with the Minister of Trade and Investment and Industry as well. So how do you see that in a sense?
And definitely, it will create a blend of cultures and mentalities with Japan and Egypt, and also is going to open the mentality of the Egyptian youth to other varieties that exist around us in the universe, not just when it comes to Egypt. Now they can see from the other side of the world. So I think, like you've said precisely.
Exactly, and I'd like to thank you very much for this review, and we're still continuing, but now we're moving to another important issue and a crisis, which is the Palestinian issue and the transfer of the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. And from Al-Yom Al-Sabi' we read that Egypt expressed regret on Monday for the failure to adopt Egyptian drafted resolution at the United Nations Security Council over the U.S. decision to recognize Jerusalem as Israel capital. The U.S. voted the resolution which calls for the U.S. declaration to be withdrawn. Now, this is another issue. Now, having 14 countries agree on an issue, and then because the United States has the power of veto, it vetoed it, even though such decision is illegal, and of course you're an expert in international law. So how do you see that?
I see the veto have always been the same story. It's a double-edged sword. Like when it doesn't come in our favor, we say, how come the United States voted, but it also saved the situation when Russia voted the veto, but it was in our favor, it's supporting the side we were backing off. So this is the veto, and this is how the UN Security Council is designed. However, when it comes to the idea of the coexistence of a state with Palestine and Israel, peace is not that one is going to take over the other. The whole idea is about coexistence, and this is from the international law even perspective. What Israel and what Trump is doing is never going to bring peace, because anything threatens this term coexistence, two states exist together. No, you want to exist solely. You're taking over settlements in unauthorized and illegal areas in Palestine. And then afterward it's escalated with the recent decision of Trump. So this is threatening the coexistence. If coexistence is threatened, then there is no peace. So I think it will backfire, and the thing is, we all know recognition is the key. So if Trump comes on his own and says, I'm deciding to do so and so, but the international community doesn't back it, and I will not recognize what you've just said, the lack of recognition takes away the power from it.
But what if, I know that now they are postponing the movement of the embassy, but what if the United States takes such a decision? Wouldn't that be like, it's like a status quo now, this is the situation and that's what's going on, and I'm enforcing it on all the world? Can that happen?
This takes us back, what you've just said, definition of colonization. Then let's take out the Security Council and go back to World War. This is the Dark Ages, literally. This is colonizing another country. By all means, this is the classic definition. So I don't think the international community is going to just stand still and watch this catastrophe happen. And the worst case scenario, you can take it to the International Court of Justice. Because it's not just unfair and illegal. It threatens the idea, the basis of the coexistence of two countries together.
Well, we hope that things get better and that the United States would change its position. Another important area is Syria as well. And from Al-Akhbar newspaper, we read that French President Emmanuel Macron predicted that the Daesh terrorist group would be crushed in Syria by February, pushing for the Syrian government and opposition to come together for fresh peace talks early next year. Now, how do you see the situation in Syria so far?
Of course, the situation in Syria, the indicator that's getting better, the statement that Russia issued recently that they're taking out their forces and they're backing off from specific area. The lack of the urgency of their presence assures that progress has been done, like their job in specific areas has been done. So this is a good indicator that the progress is going on. However, concerning the headline that Macron just said about he's predicting by February so and so the Daesh will end, I remember very well last December, just before New Year's, the same prediction happened from the international community. By 1st of January, everything is going to be over and they're going to vanish and whipped off the face of the earth. And here we are, a second year. So with these predictions, I sincerely cannot support it.
Because they are underground groups, you'd never know what might happen, but we're still going to continue resisting terrorism all over the Arab world, including Syria as well.
Precisely, like you can go with the resistance idea, but prediction, when to vanish them, we did it before. Like they always say, previous behavior predicts future behavior. The previous behavior said that we are incapable of such prediction. So I abstain from this one.
Yes, and finally we go to the Egyptian stock market, where from the Wafd newspaper we read that the Egyptian bourse on Monday gained about 2.3 billion pounds due to buying operations from Egyptian and foreign investors. The market's main index, EGX 30, was up 0.03% to reach 14,721.45 points. The small and medium share index, EGX 70, added 2.11% to reach 835.67 points. Meanwhile, the broader index, EGX 100, was up 1.65% to reach 1,955.63 points. Trading volume reached 180.76 million shares, exchanged with about 1.05 billion pounds. The market's capital gained about 2.3 billion pounds to reach about 827.68 billion pounds. Arab investors tended for selling with 9.6 million Egyptian pounds, while Egyptian and foreign investors tended for buying with 3.2 million pounds and 6.4 million pounds respectively. And before we wrap it up, the weather forecast from Al Akhbar, we read that meteorologists predict warm weather to prevail Tuesday on the north of the country and Cairo, and warmer weather on the south of the country, but they predict it to be cold at night. Mist is expected to affect visibility north of the country to the north of Upper Egypt, as low and medium level clouds are expected on the north of the country, with expected rains on the northern coast as well as on some parts in Cairo and the Delta. Moderate wind will be mostly northeastern, and the temperatures in Cairo are expected to be between 18 and 23. And that brings us to the end of this local press review. But first of all, I have to thank my guest. Thank you very much, Mr. Eissa, the international law and political expert. Thank you very much for this interview. And now we will be going to another segment, and of course stay tuned for our top stories coming up soon.